Hi, Jeff.
Hey Lupe, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing all right. Just a lot of activity going on here at
Okay.
a distance. So
Mm. So day then.
yeah, I'm getting ready to head down to Florida next week for the
Ooh.
for Unicorns Unicorn Children's Foundation's
Mhm.
gala down in Boca. So
Oh, that's exciting.
yeah, it is exciting. So
Are you gonna go for a full week or just a couple days down in Florida?
5 days.
5 days? A
Events on the 11th. So
few days of like vacation. It's great.
well, it's not really a vacation. It's more of a business trip. So
Business trip, not so much vacation. Yeah,
yeah.
great. We have another parent joining in. Hi, Carlos.
Hello there. How we doing?
Good. How are you?
We're just having a good day here, just surviving the rain.
I know this rain.
Eh,
Not
Yeah, I'm
bad.
Katrina works till 2, so I'm glad the rain's going to stop before she has to drive home.
I know it could be dangerous, especially the way it's been pouring. It's a little
Oh
scary,
yeah,
that rain.
absolutely.
Um,
Hello everybody. How are we doing? How are we
hi.
doing, Jeff?
Good, Carlos. How are you?
We're doing okay. We're doing
Good.
okay. Um, Katrina, along with her day job, she's also uh, prepping for her show. So we're excited about that.
Super excited about that one too.
Oh yeah. So Autism Tree still going to show up, I pray.
Yes, we are.
Excellent.
Hi,
Ex
Jeremy. Yeah,
Hello.
hi. Welcome in. And then I'm just gonna wait a couple more minutes just to allow more people to trickle in and we'll get started.
Okay.
How's Katrina doing, Carlos? Is she starting with rehearsals already?
Yeah, she and her musical director have been, they know the program pretty well. They created it between the two of them.
Mhm.
Actually, I should say three, and I'll talk about the third in a second. But they had one big rehearsal where they went over all the music and had to relearn all of the things that, there's a dynamic of when does Richard stop playing piano so Katrina can talk, or how does he lead in Katrina with songs and stuff like that? They have to go over all of that, but had a big run through and gonna have a second one in about a week, and so they are working. Uh, Katrina is not exactly a great public speaker,
Mhm.
so one of the things she really has to work on is her dialogue. How do you
Um,
make it sound natural? And in her case, there are people, we see a lot of cabaret shows. We have many cabaret friends, and
mhm.
you could just, they're so natural, they're so fluid. They can just go into a dialogue. They can improv when they need to. That's not Katrina. So she has to work really hard at getting the dialogue down so where it sounds natural and she can tell her story well.
Mhm.
And so that's what she's working on a lot now. It's interesting with an autistic person. There are things that she doesn't do as well as other cabaret singers, but the way she resolves is hard work.
Yeah,
And
mhm.
so, uh, so anyway, she's doing well. We're very excited. The director
Mhm.
of the show, if you see the program, there's a director named Clifford Bell, and he helped create. He was the third person who helped create her show, and he's a huge cabaret person in L.A. and very well known on the Broadway scene also. We just got word today that he's coming from LA to see the show. Well, I'm going to put him to work. he's going to MC the show, but he just announces Katrina at the beginning, and then at the end, Katrina Aguilar and all this. But that's all he has to do. But all the same, it's very exciting that he's going to take time off of his schedule, and man, he's got a really busy schedule. To take time to drive, well, actually to take the train in from LA to come see Katrina's show. So very excited about that.
Yes.
And yeah. So yeah, for those who don't know, her show is March 28 on a Tuesday for those that live in San Diego.
Yeah.
And it's all about using Disney music to explain Katrina's journey being autistic. And sometimes the good, sometimes the bad, but also how, what she's learned a lot from Disney music and a lot from life in managing the challenges of being autistic. So there, I gave my speech.
Thank you, Carlos. No, yeah, we're super excited, and we're excited to have our teens join in as well. And then, sorry, Karen Wright is trying to log in. She wants to join in for today, Lynn, and she can't log in. Let me get her the Zoom links, and then we'll get started.
I'm real curious, as a retired music teacher, where did Katrina go to school? Did she go to school here in San Diego, like high school, middle school?
Yeah, she went to Mount Carmel, and then transferred to Westview High. She's the very first graduating class at Westview.
Oh, wonderful.
And then she graduated. It took her a long time to graduate from Miracosta, and a lot because she's got, part of her autism is she's got real big problems with math. And so it took her a long time to pass the math prerequisites. But then from there, she went to Boston Conservatory.
Wonderful.
And graduated from there. And that's, sometimes I think music conservatories are they're kind of used to autistic people. You can imagine there's so many great artists who are autistic. So they worked very well with her and helped her along. Music theory was difficult because of her problems with math, but they helped her with that. And so she's a graduate of Boston Conservatory, actually as an opera singer. So doing cabarets different, but in Katrina's case, a fun kind of different. So
sure.
All right, we'll get started. Welcome, everyone. We're gonna go a couple Zoom rules for anyone who's new, but please mute yourself when you're not speaking. We do recommend speaker view for presentation, and video sharing is optional, although we like seeing everyone's smiling faces. And please type all questions or comments into the chat. We like seeing that interaction with our speaker. At the end, we will have a Q&A. So if you want to wait till then to ask your question, you're more than welcome to do so. If you're not comfortable with asking your question yourself, you're more than welcome to type it into the chat, and I will monitor the chat to ask the question. Here's a couple of Autism Tree updates. We offer 19 programs. 13 of them are in person, 3 are hybrid, and 3 are virtual. For the month of March, we have 20 upcoming events, but check out all of our social media as we announce new events all the time. We have a couple upcoming events this week. We have a virtual parent happy hour happening on Friday, March 3rd at 6 p.m. via Zoom. We have a Lego playgroup on Saturday, March 4th at 10 a.m. We have our adaptive dance for ages 5 through 10 on Saturday at 12 p.m. And then we have a Teen Time Improv workshop on Saturday as well at 1 p.m. We're partnering with another nonprofit called PACT, and they are leading the workshop. It's 2 autistic adults who love improv. So we're so excited for that one as well. And up to date, we have 491 impact videos on our Autism Tree YouTube channel. So subscribe today. And then we have 110 Lunch and Learns uploaded on our YouTube channel. So if you want to go back and see any of our past ones, you're more than welcome to do so. We will upload this one by tomorrow if you want to go back and watch it. And without further ado, I will introduce our Lunch and Learn speaker for today, who is Lynn Spafford, who has been a community partner for the past 20 years with Autism Tree. From what Karen Wright has told me, she is also celebrating 20 years with her ministry group. But we just want to thank Lynn for those 20 years for being a community partner and helping our families in crisis by donating prayer quilts. And I just want to give you the floor now, Lynn.
Okay, there we go. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm very pleased to be able to speak about our prayer quilt ministry at Point Loma Community Presbyterian Church. I don't know where these came from, but these must be some of the Autism Tree recipients. I grew up at Point Loma Community Presbyterian Church, as did my husband. We have pretty much known each other all our lives. And my main focus was the music ministry. I'm a retired music teacher and arts administrator with San Diego City Schools. And I didn't really get involved with the prayer quilt ministry until after I retired, because I love to sew and I love to do needlework crafting. And I just figured I would just want to jump in with 2 feet and would not have time to devote to it that I needed. So once I retired, I got involved with this prayer quilt ministry. Prayers and Squares is our umbrella organization. It's worldwide. It's the very first chapter of Prayers and Squares was started in 1992 at Hope United Methodist Church in San Diego. So it's a homegrown idea that just exploded, like I say, worldwide. We are chapter 78, and this is our 21st year in existence. We Prayers and Squares is an international outreach, and it combines a gift of prayer with also a hand-tied, handmade quilt. And there are kind of, they call it 3 commandments of Prayers and Squares, and we'll talk more about those later. And first one is remembering our motto. It's not about the quilt, it's all about the prayers. We're not our purpose is to uphold people in prayer, and then to give them a quilt that kind of is emblematic of that prayer. We don't just make and give away quilts. That's not our purpose. As far as getting quilts, giving quilts to people, finding the recipients, anyone can ask for a quilt. You can ask for quilt and prayers for yourself, but we do require that the person receiving the quilt has been asked about it. We ask permission before we give the gift of a prayer quilt to someone in need. If it's somebody who, like a very young child, or someone who is in severe physical problems in the hospital, who really can't consent, then a loved one can consent. But before tying a prayer quilt and praying for that individual, the person must agree, or the loved one, guardian, must agree to accept the gift of prayer in the form of a quilt. Quilts are never surprise gifts. We always want to make sure, because what happens is sometimes we say, our congregation would really love to pray for you about this, and we could give you a quilt. No, I'd rather not. Sometimes the answer is no. And the 3rd commandment is don't accept payment for a quilt. It's a gift of love and prayers, because I've had a lot of people say, love those quilts. I'd like to buy one for, so-and-so. And so we do not sell the quilts. We don't charge for quilts. We do accept donations, however, and we have a lot of people who are very happy to support our ministry with our donations. We mail quilts. I have mailed quilts all over the country. We also support, we have to buy materials and things like that. So that's what we do with our donations. let's see, what else do I want to talk about? Oh, I thought I would share a video. The pandemic put a little bit of a crimp in some of the way we operate, but it also opened up a lot of opportunities for us. In 2020, we weren't able to have our annual prayer quilt Sunday, which would be somebody standing in front of the church in worship talking about prayer quilts. So we made a video, and we made a video in 2020, 21, and 22. And the videos are pretty cool and are a nice overview. So I thought I'd share those videos with you. And I thought I'd start with actually the most recent one, which was this past August in 2022, our 20th anniversary, because it's a nice overview, 20th anniversary. So I'm a novice at screen sharing, and I am gonna see if I can get this done. Oh, here we go. This is probably it. Oh, just a second. I need to find it now.
The Prayer Quilt Ministry is excited to be celebrating the 20th anniversary of our founding. We would like to share with you some of our history and milestones. The chapter was chartered in August of 2002 as Chapter 78 of Prayers and Squares, with Nancy Hauser spearheading the effort. 23 people attended the first meeting to see if there was sufficient interest to have a viable ministry. There was a lot of enthusiasm to move forward. The first quilt was tied in October of 2002. Our 1000th quilt was tied in 2010. Through June of 2022, we have lifted up 2,128 people with prayers and quilts. Initially, our workshops met for 2 hours once a month for devotional, prayer, demonstration of quilt pattern, and show and tell. In June of 2005, we expanded our monthly meeting to include an optional sit and sew until 3 p.m., and the ministry provides lunch. 4-week beginning quilt classes were held in 2004 and 2007. They exposed new people to the ministry. We hosted several regional workshops for Prayers and Squares International in the early years at our church. This is a ministry focused on prayer. To that end, there is a prayer team that meets monthly. The team continues to pray for our recipients for at least 6 months, so updates on recipients are appreciated. The ministry has supported other meaningful endeavors over the years. We make prayer squares for use by the preschool, Sunday school, and mission groups. We have mass-produced pocket prayer squares for the military, the interfaith shelter, and even for family camp one year. We have shared our fabric stash with VBS, Loma Portal Elementary School, Wesley Palms Community, and with the Quilters of Weaverville, a small town in Northern California. Our Day of Service projects have included making layette sets for military outreach ministries and pillowcases. We have faithfully provided dinners for the interfaith shelter guests. Ministry members made over 800 cloth masks at the beginning of the pandemic that were distributed through our congregation. We provide a remembrance of the quilt to the person who requested it, initially in the form of a Christmas ornament. Then in 2007, we transitioned to bookmarks, all made from the quilt scraps. Another important aspect of the ministry is the love and support provided to one another through our fellowship together. It is a wonderful and welcoming community, and we have fun. We've caravanned together for many San Diego cruise and quilter shop hops. We had our first retreat in July of 2007 when 7 of us flew up to Whidbey Island in Washington for several days of sewing and fun. Subsequently, we have stayed a little closer to home with retreats in Lake Arrowhead, Big Bear, Temecula, Alpine, Palomar twice, and Fallbrook twice. These special times of fun and fellowship are always enjoyed by the participants. Over the years, we have been saddened by the deaths of 14 of our faithful members. We so appreciate the contributions they made while here with us and are certain that they are enjoying periodic heavenly sewing circles. We appreciate the financial support we have received from this church community, which has allowed us to cover so many people in prayer. We have benefited from Deacon Pancake Breakfast, the endowment, individual contributions, and your purchase of our handmade items throughout the years. We are very grateful that your support has provided quilting supplies, lunch, underwriting of retreats, and our lovely storage cabinets. At the first Prayer Quilt Sunday, there were 19 quilts displayed that were available to be filled with prayer. This year, we have close to 100 quilts. Who do you know that needs a prayer quilt? In her first newsletter to ministry participants, Cheryl Louie wrote the following.
What a ministry. I can feel the energy and God's power at work already, and I'm excited to be his servant. I know I'm here because of the power of prayer, and I fully expect to see prayer transform our congregation, our friends and family, and the community through the gifts of these quilts.
What a prophetic statement. The power of prayer has transformed so many hearts through this ministry, and we look forward to many more years of service to the PLCPC community.
So requesting a prayer quilt, we've had requesters from everywhere. We have an online presence, and people who are not part of our ministry, or not even San Diego. I mean, I've had people from Florida and Michigan and really everywhere say, I've heard about your ministry, and I would like to request a prayer for myself, a quilt for myself. I'd like to request prayers for, someone they know. My favorite was a pandemic request that came in from an emergency room nurse from Sharp Hospital. And she contacted me online, through email, and said, your ministry is wonderful. I'd like to request prayers for a colleague's small child who was in the hospital and very ill. And when we got the quilt and got it tied, and we have a way of looking at the quilts online. I have a link so that you can see all the quilts that are available. Maybe I'll put that in the chat, so afterwards you can go and take a look at our quilts. It's kind of fun. Anyway, once that quilt had been prayed for and tied, I drove to Sharp Hospital, and it was a madhouse. It was early in the pandemic. There were ambulances everywhere. And this young woman came out in her full PPE, and I drove through and unrolled rolled down my window and passed the quilt out to her, and then drove home. And so that quilt went, to a small child that needed it. And we had lots of requests, especially during the pandemic like that. During the pandemic, I did a lot of mailing. I did a lot of dropping quilts off on front porches. And, anyone can request a quilt. The recipients are just so wonderful. And are so appreciative. And what's really fun right now is to be able to send a link and say, you can see all of the quilts in this particular spot. So I was going to play the 2021 video, which focused on the thank you notes from our recipients, which are just so heartwarming. See if I can find it here. Oh, I don't think just a second. Here we go. I didn't do screen sharing first. Here we go. There we go. And this should be this one, I think.
Good morning. We're so happy that you're with us this Prayer Quilt Sunday as we celebrate the 19th anniversary of our ministry. In honor of the occasion, we wanted to share with you some excerpts of letters as well as photos that we have received from Prayer Quilt recipients and their families. Enjoy. The lovely quilt continues to comfort and inspire me. Friends and family have added to the personal importance of the quilt by tying knots when they visit. Now the quilt is filled with additional love and encouragement to take me on the pathway ahead with courage and strength. What an extraordinary blessing to wrap a mantle of prayer around us. The quilt is meaningful to me in so many ways, but especially as it reminds me of the power of being wrapped in a community of prayer. I drag my wonderful, beautiful quilt from room to room. How I rejoice in the knowledge that you are praying for me. I'll just continue to tote my special gathering of Christian love all over the house. I just love this tribute to our Lord, and I'm constantly reminded that you have taken the time to remember me in prayer.
My nearly 15-year-old nephew was diagnosed with bone cancer. Following a year of chemo and surgeries, he was officially in remission, but a few months later, the cancer returned and was metastatic. It was a difficult time for my family and me, and it put my faith to the test. Prayer quilts were offered to my nephew and to me. Not long after receiving the quilt, my nephew passed away at home, surrounded by his family. They placed the prayer quilt over him, and it was such a comfort to know that he was literally covered in prayers as he went to heaven. It brought us such peace. I sleep with my quilt every night, blessed by your prayers during this difficult and confusing time when I have needed strength beyond my own. Recently, my mom was diagnosed with cancer and accepted a quilt, knowing what comfort it brings. We are reminded of those praying on our behalf and know that we are not alone in this journey. I'm so grateful for my quilt. It is beautiful and fills me with warmth and comfort every time I wrap myself in it.
I have tears in my eyes and I'm feeling the prayers and love.
My beautiful quilt helps me through my darkest times. I am so blessed to have received this quilt, which continues to cover me with prayers every night.
I deeply appreciate your concern and prayers that are tied into the quilt. It has touched my heart and brought me a sense of comfort in your caring and your prayers. Know that your thoughtfulness has made a positive difference in my spirit.
Thank you for the lovely quilt that arrived during an especially challenging time in my life. It is comforting, useful, and a work of art.
I'm so thankful to receive my beautiful prayer quilt. I'm especially thankful for the prayers and thoughtfulness that this special quilt represents. It fills me with hope, faith, and love. Thank you for your prayers and for the lovely quilt. We've appreciated your concern and your prayers for us at this very difficult time in our lives. Having your prayers in the beautiful quilt has been so comforting to us.
It was such a comfort to me to have those prayers to help me through a difficult time. The doctors and nurses at Scripps were receptive and added their prayers too. I will cherish the quilt always.
I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to you for all the prayers. It means so much to me knowing that you all are praying.
It gave us such peace that she was covered in prayers from friends as she transitioned.
The lovely quilt will be a useful and treasured help through chemo. It's kind of like having a hug wrapped in prayer.
What generous, loving gifts that will bring so much pleasure to our hearts and minds for many years to come. We are so touched to have been included in this beautiful outreach that you do.
This final note came from a teenager with autism who was struggling. He requested prayers to get my mind, my head, my heart in peace, not crazy. We selected a horse quilt for him. Unbeknownst to us, he loved horses, grooming them at school. His note read, "Horse, good design. Each prayer I name, the prayers I feel. You hear God in the quilt." As we begin a new year of the ministry, our hope is that you will continue to request quilts and prayers for yourself and your loved ones, so that you all can hear God and feel the comfort of being wrapped in prayer.
So not only you heard the voices of the quilt recipients, but also the seeing all the pictures of a number of the people in who have received the quilts. People send us pictures and notes, and it's really gratifying to know that they feel the comfort of our prayers, and that really is something that's important to us. To we maintain our prayer team that meets monthly to continue to pray. I send the lists of names to the prayer team, and they continue to pray at least for 6 months for our quilt recipients. And if I get updates and can send, oh, here, here's prayers of thanksgiving, this person's done better, this person's passed away, whatever the situation is, we love getting updates from our recipients. Let's see. Oh, I was thinking I could share the very first video we did was from 2020, when everything was shut down. And that's when we established the link to be able to look at the quilts online. And really, there were very few of us that had permission to go on campus, and I was one of them with my keys to be able to pull quilts for people. But at that time we thought, oh, this would be a really good time to kind of go over again, because it was always a little bit, sometimes it's a little confusing for people to understand what our rules are. And so we did kind of this is how you ask for a prayer quilt video. So let's do that one. And that's my last short video. And that's not it. Give me a sec.
While you're trying to find a video, Karen Wright said, "Lynn, you're my hero. What a beautiful presentation, just like your quotes and your amazing team. I am forever grateful for your prayers. And for the amazing ministry, I am so blessed."
Well, thank you. Karen is a wonderful supporter and asks, requests a number of quilts, which is wonderful. Okay, hang on. I'm not getting to my desktop.
No.
Let me look at that again. Oh, here we go. I was just in the wrong place. There it is. And this is, we've gotten more sophisticated. This one was pretty simple. Oh, it's gonna go. It's very small.
Good morning, I'm Lynn Spafford. I've coordinated quilt requests for about 2 years, and in that capacity, I've been interested in the frequently asked questions about the prayer quilt ministry. I hope to clear up some of the mysteries and misconceptions about requesting and receiving prayers into quilts.
How has the ministry been operating since the COVID shutdown?
Our director, Karen Vandenberg, continues to communicate with us via email, including information that we would normally get during our monthly meetings. Members have continued to make quilts at home, and recently we've been able to have small outdoor gatherings at the church to put quilts together, to drop off quilts, and to get supplies. A number of members pivoted to making masks when masks were recommended for protection. We delivered 446 masks to the church, which were distributed to the community. And in addition, we made about 350 masks that were given to family, friends, and other organizations. We also donated fabric to Wesley Palm Senior Community so that a group there, led by our own Susie Mueller, was able to make and distribute over 150 masks to the residents there. Over the past year, 77 quilts have been given to prayer recipients, bringing our 18-year ministry total to 1,935 quilts.
May I request a quilt for someone who's not a member of our church?
Yes, anyone who needs prayer can be offered prayer in a quilt. The ministry has an online presence, and people from other states that we haven't even met have reached out and found us online, requesting our prayers. A few weeks ago, I took a quilt to an ER nurse at Sharp Memorial Hospital outside the ER entrance. She'd requested the quilt for a friend's child who has cancer. She found us online. Anyone you know who needs prayer can be offered prayer in a quilt. The ministry is about prayer. The quilt is symbolic of that prayer.
I had surgery a while ago and was laid up at home for several weeks. Why wasn't I sent a quilt?
Quilts are never surprise gifts. The prospective recipient of the quilt should first be asked if they would like our congregation to pray for them. Sometimes when offered, the answer is no and should be respected. If the answer is yes, we will need to know the recipient's name and their prayer request. In the case of a child or someone who is unable to consent to prayers, the request and consent of a close family member are sufficient. Also, you don't have to wait for someone to request a quilt for you. Feel free to request our prayers and a quilt for yourself.
Your quilts are really lovely. I'd like to buy one for one of my friends. How much do they cost?
We never charge for the quilts. They're a tangible representation of love, comfort, and prayer for those in need. We will accept donations to the ministry to cover supplies and mailing costs. Those can be made to the church with a memo that the donation is for the prayer quilt ministry.
How are the quilts tied now that we're not in church to do it?
We are still taking requests the way we always have, through our email address or by contacting me directly. We have a new no contact way of looking at and choosing the quilts online. A slide is prepared for the Sunday service. Ministry members tie the quilts and the quilts are dropped off or mailed.
How can someone join or get involved with the prayer quilt ministry during these current times?
The best way to get involved right now is to pray. Pray for the ministry. Pray for the quilt recipients that you see on the slides during worship. You may not know this, but the prayer quilt ministry has a prayer team that gathers regularly and continues to pray for quilt recipients for 6 months or more. If you would like to get our ministry emails to see where you might be able to get involved in other ways, you can contact Karen Vandenberg. During this time of uncertainty, prayer is a welcome gift. Thank you for supporting this ministry by continuing to offer prayer and the comfort of a quilt to anyone in your life who needs it.
All right, there we go. Oh, it will stop. Let's see. I was thinking I'll put the address in the for requests and where you can request a quilt. Our address is Red Brick Prayer Quilts at gmail.com. So that's the best way, and I'm the one who answers the email at that address. And if you want to take a look at our quilts, we have a Padlet address, padlet.com/Red Brick Prayer Quilts, longest title ever. If you're familiar with our church, it's the big red brick church near the high school, and that's why we're lots of red brick /gallery. And we keep that website up to date as quilts are requested. We take them off the website so that they don't get requested twice. Actually, that did happen yesterday, is that somebody requested it in the morning before we'd had a chance to get it off. Somebody else requested it, and so they had to regroup, and I said, I'm so sorry, that one's gone. Here are three others that have kind of that same feeling, so they're in the process of deciding which quilt they would like. Another thing that we have done in the past, we did for a quilt last Sunday, and also we're going to be doing for one of our pastors very soon. If you've received a quilt before, we can do what we call a retie. And usually I ask them to get the quilt to me, and I put additional new untied ties in it. And so we pray for it again you get back on the rotation for the prayer team, and more ties and more prayers. Last week we retied a quilt for a woman who had had breast cancer in 2011, and then it was retied in 2012, and then she's been in remission for almost 10 years and now has a recurrence. And so I added ties to her quilt and we tied it again. I mean, these quilts are very important for people. A lot of times people getting chemo, I've never had to go through that, but I guess it's very cold in those rooms. People take their quilts with them, they wrap themselves up. One of our pastors, actually pastor associate, had first had his cancer diagnosis probably last summer, and we tied a quilt for him, and the cancer it's kind of gotten worse, and he's going to have some really radical surgery this month, and we're going to retie his quilt. So that's another thing. If you have requested a quilt for someone, Karen, you may be out there and you know the people that you've requested quilts for. If there are additional issues, we're happy to take the quilt back and retie it. So that's another service we do. So that's pretty much the things that I had planned to talk about. Happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
I saw a comment from Carlos earlier. He said, my family works with an Honduras Christian mission who supports children in a pediatric hospital in San Pedro Sula, Honduras. I may want to introduce you to the leader of the Honduras mission to see if you can work together.
That would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. We would enjoy that.
Yeah, it would be they already have a blanket mission, and so maybe tying your work with theirs would be a great support. So offline, it'd be really cool if we could if I could introduce you to the leader of that mission.
Okay, sure. That'd be wonderful.
And then I have a couple questions. I was just wondering, how long have you been a prayer quilt ministry liaison for the Point Loma Presbyterian Community Church? How long have you been doing this for?
Okay, yeah, I coordinate requests, and I put the quilts out on Sunday morning, make sure they get to either the requesters or recipients. And let's see, seems to me I've been doing that since 2017, maybe 2016. I don't know. As I said, I retired in 2014, but then I did go back and work for about half the year of 2015. So I really got involved in 2016. So it seems to me it's been about 7 years since I've been coordinating the requests. Also, the director, the blonde lady, that's my sister. Her daughter is involved in the ministry. My two youngest daughters who live locally also sew quilts for the ministry. One of the I think in the first video, my daughter Laura was wrapped in a quilt that she received 8 years ago when her fiance was killed in an automobile accident. It's been 8 years today, so sad anniversary for our family, but she survived that. She was in the accident, but she survived and has done well. But she received a quilt at that time, and she, it was so meaningful to her that she wanted to get involved with sewing as well.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm so sorry for your loss. Is there anyone with any other questions? I encourage you to ask any questions, comments. And then I know you had mentioned that there was an email and like the link to see all the prayer quotes. Is there a chance that you could type it into the chat so I could share it with?
Let's see, I did. I'm seeing it here. To request is redbrickprayerquilts@gmail.com. Do you see it in the chat?
I do not. I don't know if anyone else sees it. I don't know if it's
Oh.
on my end.
Let's see. You can see.
I
the-
see it.
Do you see
I
it?
see it. Yeah, I even took a photo of it so I can send to the leader of the Honduras mission.
Right. And then under that is the Padlet.com.
And I see that.
Okay, I wonder why you can't see that, Lupe.
Sure.
I don't know if I can do something different. Are you seeing all the chat? You read Karen's message to me, and I typed in right under Karen's message.
Oh, that's okay. If anything, I could ask for it via email too.
Absolutely. I have your email address. Be happy to send it to you.
Thank you so much. Usually we send like a lunch and learn recap on Fridays with any additional resources. So I'll make sure to include those for anyone who wants to request a prayer quote.
That would be wonderful.
Another question I have is if someone wants to join the prayer quote ministry, how do they join? I know the last video kind of it answered that question, but it was like 10.
I know it goes by fast. So if you're interested in coming, and not everybody sews, we have some people who who come, they can put in the ties, or they can we have somebody who just kind of comes and prays with us and hangs out with us, and there's lots of ways to get involved. Our the easiest way is probably to come to a meeting. We meet on the first Saturday of every month at our church in our Family Life Center, which is right on Chatsworth Boulevard there. And we meet at 9 a.m. Usually we have about an hour, 9 to 10. We have kind of our business meeting where we take care of any business. And we also, during that time, teach new patterns, things like that. And then the rest of the day until 3 o'clock, we sew. And so anybody who's really interested can come anytime between 9 and 3. And we're happy to hang out with them and sit down and talk about how they might be interested in getting involved.
Oh, thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
I know you
That's
shared
another thing. I'll put that in the email
Okay,
along
thank
with
you.
these other things.
No, thank you. Is there, we would love to hear any stories, like individual stories of how your prayer quotes have made a difference in lives of so many people who needed it. Do you have like any stories that stand out to you that you would like to share? I know you shared the one about the nurse dropping off the quilt at the ER.
Right. A lot of prayer quilts show up at memorial services. I mean, they're that important to the family that it was not even a quilt that our ministry made. It was an old neighbor of mine, and I went to his service, and a church that they had gotten involved with out in the East County, because they moved out to East County. His quilt was there. Pretty much anybody involved in our church. My mother still uses my dad's prayer quilt. My 92-year-old mother is still alive, but my dad died about 7 years ago, and his prayer quilt was really important to him, and she still uses it because it was important to her. And she always says, well, I would never want my own prayer quilt. I would just want to use daddy's. So that's important to the recipients. I have a young woman. I'm in the bell choir at our church, and a young woman who her mother's a little bit older than I am, and I've known her since she was born. A number of years ago, she contracted colon cancer, and she died just before her 50th birthday. It was so very difficult for all of us. But I remember Janine. This is why I love having the prayer quilts. We used to just kind of give me an idea of color, and almost everybody says blue, because blue is everybody's favorite color. And so, we make a lot of blue quilts, but what's fascinating is that people who get a chance to look at the quilts, so many people have said, that quilt spoke to me. That is my quilt. That's the quilt that I was supposed to have. And Janine came, and I looked through the cupboards looking for quilts for her, and she initially said, oh, I really like green and I really like purple, and I'm pulling all these green and purple quilts. And she kept going back to this quilt that had navy and primary colors with little tiny white polka dots in all of these different colors. And she says, I don't know, this is the quilt that keeps calling to me. This is the quilt I'm supposed to have. And so having people be able to look at the quilts and choose their own quilt. And that's another reason why I feel like quilts can't be a surprise, because if you give them the opportunity to choose their own quilt, they're going to choose something that you didn't even think of. And I love that. I really believe that God has a hand in choosing the quilts that go to people. Before we had this Padlet, people could, people would give me colors, and I would stand at the cupboard and look at the quilts and pray about it until I was led to the right quilt. And we always say, there's a quilt in the cupboard for everybody, and it might not be my quilt. A lot of times people will choose a quilt and there's a quilt. No, it was the quilt that went out this last Saturday for a gentleman who has pancreatic cancer, and the quilt is primarily purple, pink, and green. And my sister said, a guy chose that? And I go, yeah, maybe it reminds him of his grandmother's quilt. You just don't know. You have no idea why a quilt will speak to a recipient.
Well, thank you for sharing that. We love that. And then Karen typed in the chat, the prayer quilts mean so much to each person that receives one. A friend of mine that had to go to radiation 35 times took it with her each time she went and wrapped it herself in the treatment. She felt the prayers and was so blessed. So thank you, Karen, for sharing that as well. And thank you, Lynn, too, for sharing your stories, everything that you have done for your community, but also Autism Tree for the past 20 years, and Karen requesting the blankets from your ministry group. But just
pleasure.
Nice way to end today's Lunch and Learn. And before we get going, if you're comfortable sharing your screen, we're going to take a group photo, and that's how we're going to end today's Lunch and Learn. Okay. Thank you. And then I'll just count us off, and then I'll take the photo. 1, 2, 3. All right. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Lynn, so much for being our guest speaker for today. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and we hope to see you at another Lunch and Learn. Thank you so much.
Take care, guys.
Bye. Thank you. Pleasure to be with you all.
Thank you.